So everybody, and listen, conference together so that we can get together once a year. And absolutely want to thank Truly for their continued sponsorship and leadership in the educational side, Sunburn as well. I thank them for being here. I am going to call out the other MMTCs. And to me, I don't know if the message will get to them, but I'll speak for this doctor at least, and if there's other doctors out there that don't agree with me, absolutely pathetic that once a year you can't get here, okay, and put a table up, and show us your products and meet and greet. Absolutely pathetic. 23 operators in this state. And listen, I know Gene well enough to know that I don't think it's overly financially preclusive, okay, for them to come here and be a minor sponsor. So, like I said, I don't know if the message is going to get back to anybody in their CEO offices or other whatever. We all know that we don't see the reps out in our offices anymore like we used to. Anyway, listen, great sessions this morning, and I thought Dr. Tischler, even though he wasn't here, I actually sent him a message on X. I still call it Twitter, but and thanked him for his presentation. I wish he could have been here. I really think he spoke to a lot of the issues that we as boots on the ground medical cannabis practitioners deal with every single day. I'm going to introduce my panel, which is great this morning. We're going to get back into some clinical issues and talk about a little bit of extraction and stuff like that. But I just wanted to use my few moments just to express where I really feel our role can be as doctors that do this. I think, I don't know, I did my last ER shift 9 years ago, and of course medicine has changed. Love my nurse practitioners, love my PAs, love my extenders, but we're still the doctors, And I think in a lot of ways we've given up a little bit of our cachet and I don't know, omniscient, omnipotent, and the whole bit, but I still to play as doctors in leading the way as we go towards what absolutely is going to be inevitable, some degree of legal recreational program, decriminalization. I could probably put about 10 different derivations onto what things will look like 4 years from now, 8 years from now, 10 years from now. My patients laugh at me when I tell them we're going to have 10 more years at least in Florida as we go forward, no matter what happens to the extent of the issues of protection in the workplace, option for home grow, reciprocity state by state. I laugh about it with my patients. I just turned 69 when they throw my behind into the assisted living center. If I'm a medical cannabis card holder, there better be a bench and an ashtray out there in the garden for me. And I've never smoked a cigarette in my life. But those things don't happen unless somebody's still taking the leadership, right, towards making sure that we maintain our lane. People ask me why I was a proponent for Amendment 3, and I was, legal adult use. I don't know if anybody saw me on, I'd like to call it the front of President Trump's endorsement of Amendment 3. Some would call it the back. But, why did I do that? And that's my message to you as physicians. I think we can always stand for public health, for public education, and public safety. And, I'm an emergency medicine physician. That's always how I base, my ultimate decisions to that extent. So to me, even though I knew there were hazards to us as a quote-unquote business community that practices medical cannabis, that's obvious. We're going to have to be smart. We're going to have to make sure we fight to maintain our lane. But ultimately, when legal adult use comes, we still have a role to play in insisting that it gets done appropriately. with the appropriate public health, public safety, and public education in mind. One of the things that I was worried about with Amendment 3 were all the newcomers to the cannabis world walking into the legal adult use world with medical desires of pain, anxiety, sleep. We know what they are. We do it every day. And they can be on a list of meds that high. But now they're able to walk into the legal adult use side of the dispensary, and all of a sudden they're going to get the appropriate. No, they're not. So not to danger of anybody dying, thank God, because nobody dies from our stuff, but to the extent of success in their journey. And of course, some patients will end up in the ER at 2:30 in the morning because they're high for the first time, and they're going to call 911. So anyway, that's my message. Let's not give up. The headwinds are always strong against us. But I think, once again, as a physician community, especially those boots on the ground docs like, us that are out there every day, we can have a very pivotal role to play in the community discussion as we go forward towards legal adult use. So we have a great panel this morning, and it's an honor. I listen, when you're the moderator, I don't have to do anything, no slides, no this, no that. I just get to come up and, do a little song and dance for a bit. But these guys prepared, and I always appreciate it. And we have some great talks this morning. We're going to get around to some clinical stuff. But first, we're going to start off with, I think, one of the really intriguing things about cannabis world these days, which are the various methods that we have to use it. One of my 30-second elevator speech to doctors and politicians don't have any idea why we do what we do. You have to get off the image of the guy on the front of the zigzag papers, okay, which is, smoking a Delta-9 THC joint. That's still the image of almost every doctor that you talk to, that doesn't really know what we do, and absolutely the politicians. That's a 1969 image if you're my age, or a 1982 image when I started emergency medicine. But 2025, it's multiple cannabinoids, not just Delta-9, but all the others, good and bad, but also the ways of using it, right? And that's what makes cannabis as medicine in 2025 is not just the multiple cannabinoid profile. That's joyous for us. And I can't wait to see more research on the acidic cannabinoids and everything else. But it's also the extraction techniques that allow patients now to utilize the tinctures and the topicals and the edibles. And I'll be honest with you, I'm a simple emergency physician, non-scientific. I continue to be fascinated by the extraction techniques, and I look for the future to the extent of the knowledge of knowing that there are probably more things coming down the pipe to that extent. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our first speaker this morning, and I don't want to mess up anybody's name, that's for sure. So Tony just told me he is a Florida resident and has been around. Blue River Terps, and I've tried them. Listen, they've been around for a while, and I can't wait to hear the fascinating talk about how you get to the beautiful products that you deliver to the market here in Florida. So, Tony Verzura, come on up and talk to us. Yep.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, so just real briefly, I am born and raised in Florida. Not that many people. There we go. There's one. There's a couple out there. But so, yeah, I'm born and raised here. And my background, I've got 85 cannabis awards and 4 patents in the space. Not a doctor, but I was a patient first in the 90s. And I've been in this field since I'm 16. I'm 47 today. So I've been around it a long time. The patents revolved around non-active and actives being suspended MCT oil. That was granted in 2017. Kind of tells you how far back this goes. And this course that I developed, Cannabis Alchemy, Unlocking the Science of Extraction and Bioavailability, in my opinion, is very important. It's something that I think doctors should know about. It's like you said, it's kind of the future, but for me, it's kind of the past, and we're kind of catching up. So this is going to be an interesting one. So I've got to give you a disclosure. So I'm going to read the disclosure so we can get through this. But all right. So it's required CME accreditation standards like to disclose the following potential conflicts of interest. I am a founder and owner of a company called Blue River that operates within the cannabis industry, including the development and licensing of cannabis-related products and extraction technologies. I have a financial interest in the manufacturing and commercialization of certain products, including the development and vaporization hardware, as well as solventless extracts, edibles, oral concentrates, and solventless CBN technologies. While every effort has been made to present evidence-based, unbiased educational content, please be aware of these relationships as they may be perceived as potential conflicts of interest. This information is provided in the spirit of full transparency and to maintain integrity of the educational activity. Okay, thank you. This has nothing, that really has nothing to do with what we're about to go through, so this isn't a Blue River promotion. All right, so the introduction of the abstract. Cannabis is a chemically complex plant, as you guys have always seen in research. We've got hundreds of cannabinoids, esters, flavonoids, all trapped inside this little, I got a little pointer, yes. This little head right here is actually what it's all about. And this is the bioactive compounds driven that where our therapeutic effects come from. This is no value, and neither is the actual plant material. So when we talk about combustion and we're talking about smoking, we're actually combusting the plant material as well as those resin glands. And so this presentation is going to focus on cannabis chemistry, extraction methodologies, product formulations, bioavailability, vape hardware safety. Those are kind of hot topics that I think everybody is interested in. But it's important to know that's where the bioactivity is at. And so it's going to get deeper into that. And so I don't subscribe to sativa, indica, or hybrid. It doesn't hit my vernacular. This has all been muddied over the years, thousands of years. So I see things in type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are chemotypes. It's always important to cover the bases here. Chemotype 1, these are drug type cultivars. I put the leaves up there so that you can see them. In my world, there's narrow leaf, long narrow leaf, and then there's broad narrow leaf drug type cultivars. The leaves have no value medically whatsoever. They just give you a kind of genetic footprint of where these plants are coming from. So type 1 is the THC dominant, highly psychoactive. Type 2, balanced THC, CBD, moderately psychoactive. Type 3, CBD dominant, therapeutic, non-intoxicating. Type 4, CBG dominant, very rare, research focused. You may have heard of GW Pharmaceuticals. I know the geneticist who actually bred the mutation for CBG many years ago, so there actually is pure CBG formats. Very interesting, type 4. And then type 5, non-cannabinoid industrial hemp. This is very important for what is going on in the world of the CDC that has been assigned research, as well as the FDA and the DEA, which is all reviewing the proposed new rescheduling. And they really need to focus on the type cultivars and not really pay attention to the word sativa or indica, because it really isn't going to give you a clear path of what we're talking about. This is the, looks like we had a little run over, the active versus non-actives. Earlier when I mentioned about the first patents, everyone thought I was crazy when I was hyper-focused on non-active cannabinoids. Well, the plant itself produces in those trichome heads, within the cell walls of the trichome is where you're going to have all of your non-actives. Those are, it starts with this grid, which will be a CBGA or CBGVA, and from there you actually break down into THCA, CBDA, CBCA in these different synapses. So eventually this is kind of the compounds within the head. None of them are activated, not any of the compounds. So when we're talking about the flower, the plant, the resin in its live format, even in its cured format, it's not an active compound. It's not psychoactive. It's not a drug yet. They do offer lots of different beneficials, and people need a lot of research in this. This is a field that I think is untapped. And then when you apply heat, each one of these non-active cannabinoids is going to have a different boiling point or melting point. That melting and then boiling point will have different temperature ranges, such as THCA converts to THC 240, 250 degrees. Each one of them will actually have a slightly different one, which makes it more complicated because when we talk about terpenes and flavonoids, they also have a different melting and boiling point as well. So these are terpenoids. Most people know them, the aromatic compounds. They're responsible for the effects. A lot of potential synergistic health benefits. Best way to understand terpenes is that terpenes have existed in all herbs, plants, leather, steel, tablecloths. Everything that exists in life is an essential oil. That's what a terpenoid is. They exist in the plant. And what's fascinating about that is when you start to look at cannabis, you can read the terpene profiles that the labs are testing. They may go up to 28. There's 150 of them. Linalool, as an example, is what we know as lavender, right? And so lavender grows in the Northwest Pacific in a very specific area. Oranges, since we're from Florida. D-limonene, there's two types of areas that oranges grow the most. That's going to be California and Florida. They produce very one-dimensional terpenoids, which is D-limonene. And so this cannabis plant, you can see that it's actually older in the genomics because cannabis came before oranges. Cannabis came before lavender. It came before because it has all the terpenoids that are present in the plant. So individually, each genetic, which is over 800 different types of genetics on the planet, breeders are basically grabbing different types of terpene profiles to try to pair them. Those all have a melting point and boiling points that are much lower than cannabinoid conversion points. So it gets very complicated. Then we talk about flavonoids, which are also present in the same trichome heads. Flavonoids, as we know, those are pigments. They have health benefits, anti-inflammatory properties. Best way to describe flavonoids when you see grapes, the purple inside the grapes, inside wine, those are flavonoids. Anything you see fruits, strawberries, oranges, again, these are all different color variations. And when you see cannabis grown in different types of environments, altitude, elevation points, microclimates, you'll see a lot of characteristics of different types of colors that are within the plant itself. It's rare that the anthocyanins and flavonoids that are present in there are within the trichome head itself. It's mostly found within the plant structure itself. They look very pretty, and they, during extraction there may be different colors, but the synergistic properties between flavonoids, anthocyanins, and terpenes separately from cannabinoids, both active and non-active, is really an unexplored category in itself, because most fruits and vegetables are isolating one type of anthocyanin or flavonoid or one type of terpenoid. These have hundreds of them. So there's still, in my opinion, we're probably 2% in the extraction world of the potentially unlocking what's really here in the plant. To kind of get probably 2%. Maybe I pushed it a little further, but with the things that I'm trying to do. But anyway, this is the most important part. So this is understanding that resin gland types for extraction. Since when you're talking about extraction, I think in the medical world, a lot of people try to push away from extraction, but it's really important to understand this is where it's happening. There's capitated stalks, there's capitated sisal, and then there's bulbous. This is where it's minimal. So if we look at the surface of a cannabis flower and we see those little pretty trichomes, and it looks like, maybe little micro diamonds, if you will, if you're kind of looking at our sugar. You see this on tomato plants as well. But there's actually like a grid, and between the calyx and the leaf, you'll actually see from a genetic standpoint, it could be gridded like a forest, or the stalks will be fighting for space. So there's actually a genetic mutation between those two. And so when we're talking about extraction, people are breeding for the forest. And when we're talking about non-solvent extraction, they're really breeding for this one right here. And this one's harder to get, and this one's very hard to get out. Solvent extraction is going to be able to get all three. Non-solvent's going to be focused more on this. And it's important to understand that there's groups and classifications of those terpenes. There's monoterpenes and sesquiterpenes. The best way to understand monoterpenes is that's when it's alive. The plant may have 2% terpenes. That's mostly dominant in monoterpenes. Once we cut the plant down, harvest it, hang it, and dry it, the monoterpenes gas off, and then it moves to sesquiterpenes. That's why no one smokes live flower, because it has to be dried. The monoterpenes evaporate off at 80% rate. They turn into a sesquiterpene, which give you more of a floral aromatic aroma, but it's actually it's part of the process. The plant has to absorb sugars, amino acids. It's a process that's done during the curing process. This is really important because that's where you get the difference between live and cured extractions. And so that's really key between the difference. And when we're talking about mechanical extraction techniques, we have dry sift, ice water extraction, rosin pressing. And when you understand dry sift, today's world has moved very, very, very quickly. 10 years ago, I was doing dry sift extraction from live sift, static extraction. And now today, that's what you see a lot of. If you go to conventions, you're going to see a lot of this like static extraction. And so what the world in technology is trying to do is say, hey, we can remove those bulbous heads, we can take those trichome heads off with agitation when we have them live, freshly cured, or aged and cured. And so there's this whole movement happening right now. Essentially, when you see dry sift or hash, it's just the isolation of the trichome head. Only until we express the head itself does it actually become rosin. So it's like a grape. We just smash it, we leave the skins to the side, and we're interested in the grape juice. And that's what rosin is. That picture over there is literally just everything from inside the trichome head. There's classifications. It gets even deeper. Micron classifications. Those heads can be classified from 25 micron, as low as 25 micron, up to 160, maybe 200 micron. Each type of plant, the genetics, the cultivation methods, the environment is all going to change the classification of where we would consider desirable heads for this particular process. So there's genetic breeding, there's technology to be able to get the yields, to be able to make this viable. And so there's some pros here. Pros, it's an organic mechanical extraction. The best way to explain that is we all love freshly squeezed orange juice in this room, I would assume. That's what's going on here, is it's freshly squeezed orange juice from the fruit. It is full spectrum, but I think that word gets used a lot. And so it's really a premium selection. When we're talking about solventless and we're talking about trichome heads and we're talking about isolating the bulbous head, we're only talking about 1/3 of the heads, and we're only talking about the very supreme, the best of the best heads, so that we can get to what I call premium select. It's not really a full spectrum, so it's misunderstanding. And yes, there's lower yields for cons, and this is still labor induced. Now, good thing is the world has moved very quickly in the last 3 years. There's automation and semi-automation. 2 guys are running 500 pounds a day right now. One guy could run 500 pounds a day. This world has moved very, very, very quickly. I've got some basic equipment up there just so you can see like how it's being pressed. But we're getting measurements on what's the pressure, what's the temperature, plate temperature. A lot of things can happen in that world. Chemical extraction is the other side of this. This is solvent-based. So this gets a little confusing. There's CO2, subcritical. Everyone tries to say this is solventless. This is not solventless. This is a solvent extraction unless that extractor is somehow able to create a CO2 extract without winterization. Winterization is removing the waxes and lipids because in a full plant extraction using subcritical CO2, it's going to pull everything out of the plant, everything. So it's actually a very, very, very good method for extraction, but if that plant was grown outside or grown outdoors, you're going to actually pull pesticides and heavy metals and other things in with it, and so they have to winterize it. And in that process, they're going to use ethanol or alcohol, and then they're going to freeze out the lipids and fats, so it falls into the solvent category. Then there's hydrocarbon, which can be N-butane, not necessarily the same butane in a lighter. It's a lab-grade N-butane, so people think, they hold up the lighter and that's what they're using. Not really the same thing. And PHO, so some people are combining N-butane and propane. They're all hydrocarbons. Hydrocarbons have been used for many, many years, and this becomes the difference between a polar and non-polar extraction. So in the water, you are going to have non-polar, and in this extraction, you can actually have polar. What that means is the cannabinoids that are in raw form, non-active, the terpenoids and the flavonoids have an attraction. And so hydrocarbon actually is, from a chemical standpoint, going to attract those compounds out because of the polarity, and that's actually a true full spectrum extraction method. Now, that's gotten a bad name because over the years, once upon a time, they used to do this with a glass pipe and a coffee filter and butane cans. That's not where we're at today. C1D1 labs that are what's called full recovery, so that gas passes through the plant material, and then out comes all of those extracts. That's where we get live resin because they're coming from live heads, live harvest. You also have cured resin, which is coming from a plant that's been cured. That is actually a full spectrum extract. When it's done right, that from a chemical standpoint, you can't really argue non-solvent versus solvent because it's the entire bud itself is put into a cylinder in which the hydrocarbon is being passed through it. Instead of isolating specific heads, it's actually the whole plant. And then ethanol extraction. Ethanol extraction was used many years ago. It was used for smokable extracts many years ago. We've learned our lessons, and everyone's kind of moved to the hydrocarbon ethanol extraction. The reason why that's kind of fallen off is yields. Hydrocarbon will be an 85% yield. CO2 will be 75. Ethanol extraction could be 62 to 68. And so you have to build a lot of facility, spend a lot of money for ethanol extraction. Ethanol is also from the corn industry, so not sure how everyone feels about that. But in order to get ethanol, you have to have large corn industry to be able to produce that. And so that's another method of how they're producing that, of which many companies try to repurpose the ethanol, but you're in a loophole with the ethanol. So you're just constantly buying ethanol. And so most people have kind of pushed that towards tinctures and distillate these days. Those distillates would go into edibles. If we're talking about safety efficacy, ethanol is still a good extraction, maybe not for vaporization or things that go in your lungs. Great for topicals, great for edibles, and you still can do that where there's not ethanol present. The pros on this is highly efficient and scalable systems. The cons on it, residual solvent risk, extra purification steps. So a lot of different things that are out there. CRC is one of those things that came 5 years ago, color remediation. You really don't know your inputs. Could come from floor trim, could come from top buds. And we can make it look like clear water all day long, but you don't know what those inputs are. But when done right, I think when you need to really do the research. When people talking about live resin, it's typically from whole plant, fresh frozen buds, top buds. It's important to identify the biomass. This one's going to be a good one. This is all of your cannabis product categories and bioavailability, THC, bioavailability, and product types. This is probably the best slide in here because there's a lot of misunderstanding about it. I try to categorize it. So inhalation, we're talking pulmonary. It's really about 30, and we're talking bioavailability. So this is 30%. Onset times fast, 3 to 10 minutes. Durations 1 to 3 hours. If doctors are in the room thinking about this, there are some different health risks to consider there. You're combusting, right? And so we got to think about carcinogens. How are we combusting? If we are able to vaporize the flower, you're going to have a much better approach. And so some people that are just older may prefer vaporizing flower. I wouldn't say there's necessarily anything wrong with it. It's just understand where the flower came from, make sure the flower is tested. Listen, I used volcanoes. So I'm 47, but I still use volcanoes. So there's nothing wrong with it. Just make sure you vaporize the flower. Make sure it's tested. Make sure it's not some flower for some weird place. The testing of the flower is really important when you're going to be recommending that. Concentrates, which a lot of people stay away from, is 40 to 70%. It has a 1 to 3 minute onset. It has a little extended time. The concentrates has gone through, ups and downs over the year. And I think the best thing to understand about concentrates is that it's 10 to 1, meaning that there's 10 grams of flour for every 1 gram of extract. Whether it's non-solvent or solvent, it's a 10 to 1 ratio. So if you're ever looking up different types of nutrition, mushrooms, medicinal mushrooms, lion's mane, things like this, it could be 5 to 1, 8 to 1, 10 to 1. That's when it tells you what the ratio is. So it's a 10 to 1. So 10 to 1 means you use less of it because it's more potent. So if a flower is 25%, which is 250 milligrams, you need 10 grams of that to get to 850 milligrams, or 85% to 90%. And so you need less of it. So if it's a higher bioavailability and it's more potent, the whole idea is for you to use less of it. It's actually really more affordable than you smoking that much flower. And so that's why people convert over to that. We're going to talk about safety efficacy here in a second. Oral is kind of this area that I think has a lot of improvement, but it's going through the digestive tract. And so when we talk about gummies, which dominate the industry, unfortunately, this is not the best delivery method. Everyone loves them. I love them. My wife loves them. My mom loves them. I help make them. But we're losing a lot. We're losing a lot of cannabinoids in it. Sure, there's been technologies with nanotechnology and different things to help us, but if we're really talking about from a medicinal standpoint, an encapsulated capsule, a capsule that's been banded or is actually sealed in some capacity, will get through that second layer in the digestive, and you'll get a much higher bioavailability. And so if I'm thinking digestive, I'm thinking it's got to be into a capsule to reach the higher numbers. A lot of people are familiar with capsules, and so it's easy to do it. It's discrete. It's oral. It's an oral, discrete, exact milligram. The gummies could change things. Digestive is also a very interesting conversation and topic because most people think this has to do with your fat content. So I actually met the Czech scientists that helped discover more than the CB1 and CB2. We actually have 31 different receptors. There's enzymes to consider. And the best way to describe how the edible world would work is that if we look at each individual in the room, we're all born with a different amount of receptors. So if we have 31, you may have 10,000, you may have 500 that you're born with. And if I eat a 40 milligram edible, maybe it fills up all those receptors. And you eat a 10 milligram edible or a 50 milligram edible, you have 10,000 receptors, you're barely touching your receptor system. So some persons at 5 milligrams are on the floor, another person's at 500 milligrams and don't feel anything. It's an inconsistency because we're inconsistent. We are not the same. We're not born the same. So it's a difficult one. And so the best you could do is start low and figure out if that's for you. Sublingual, it's not a sexy category, but you know what? That's the one. That's where my patent started. It's because when we talk about a sublingual, and we're really truly sublingual, not putting it in your mouth and swallowing it, but keeping it underneath the tongue for 45 seconds, moving it around in the mouth, a sublingual has very high bioavailability, very, very high. It may take less time than that based on the technology used, but that is a category, I think, from the medical side, that is something that you can control the dosing. This is microdosing that's controlled. This is high bioavailability. There's a lot that can be done in that category. People have kind of just maybe almost forgot about that category a little bit, especially when we get into adult use. That's why I say it's not sexy anymore. In the medical world, it's very sexy. In the rec world, it's almost non-existent. Definitely there could be more development in that. And then suppository. No one in the United States wants to talk about this one. Outside this country, this is a big one. This is actually a very good delivery method. And so we get clammy, we get weird in the United States about this one, but Europe, Canada, other places accept it. And there is actually more that could be developed with this, and there's reasons to target this. But you've got onsets, 10, 30 minutes, very long periods of time depending on the dosing. Topicals, these are going to be very low effective rates on bioavailability. It's not going to be very effective. And so we're almost there, almost there. Transdermal though, transdermal can go through the, that's okay. That's okay, I'll pick it up. And then transdermal is going to increase that. So we're just talking, if we're talking about a salve or we're talking about a balm, that's going to be very low. Think about capsules and topicals though, there is a connection there. And so topicals in conjunction with oral actually could be very good. And so we've got to think about the layering of what happens here. Transdermal, stay away from the DMSO and other bad chemicals. 3M owns patents on this kind of stuff for transdermal gels and things like that. Okay, so vape hardware. This gets complicated. These are the things to stay away from. All right, these are heating elements. We've got ceramic coils, quartz coils, metal coils. That's where the industry has been for the last several years. Ceramic is preferred ability to provide very even heating, reduced risk of metal leaching. So it's inert. However, it can be prone to higher particle emissions. So just because someone's using ceramic doesn't mean that it's not going to put out emissions. This could be 10 times to quartz, just as an example. So if somebody has the wrong configuration in their vape device and they're using ceramic and it's not oscillating and it's constant heat, you actually could be putting out quite a bit of emissions. Quartz, definitely the more preferred when it comes to particle emissions, except it's going to be more erratic and quality varies because depends on the manufacturing source. And metal coils, definitely going to be the one to stay away from. That's going to degrade, that could have lots of leaching. This is the one, anyone that's using a metal coil today's day, absolutely not the way you want to go. And so if you're talking to patients and you're recommending them and they're saying, hey, I love this vape, ask them what the coil is. If they don't know what the coil is, they need to find out. Because if the coil is just from an e-cigarette company and they're just doing something, if they say metal coil, try to get them into ceramic or quartz. Cartridge materials, I always tell everyone the same thing. There's the glass itself, and then there's resin and plastic. So some people think that the resin and the plastic is actually worse. They actually do have quite an advancement on thermoplastics, and there is different types of plastic that can exist. This P812 is identified as terpene safe, medical grade. So there are good medical grade plastics. And then with the glass, they have a very good chemical erosion. However, in the glass world, you could have heavy metals because where did you source your glass? So now you have a reputable manufacturers for the glass because there's different types of glass. Glass can come from China, it could come from Germany, it could come from the United States. There's different grades of different grades of glass. The additives and cutting agents, stay away from vitamin E, acetate. I don't care what anyone says, this is strongly advised to not have that. Anything with PGs, PEG, these are cutting agents that we should have all learned over the last 5 years. This is why vapes are getting banned. This is what's causing chemical reactions when combusted with other temperatures. This could cause a lot of illness and sickness could come from this. Terpenes, when we're talking about terpenes, There's a whole category of terpenes. Cannabis-derived terpenes will be the most natural. When we start to talk about different types of concentrations of terpenes, it's important to understand that there is a threshold to this. As an example, there's 2 studies that are out there. Anything more than 6% in myrcene could be carcinogenic. Batteries and battery supplies, voltage regulations and battery qualities. These are very important because you don't want to overheat the oil, so you want to look for voltage variables. You want to have batteries that have the ability to have different volts and variables, or built-in batteries that oscillate up and down. You don't want a constant temperature. So when you're talking to patients, ask them what kind of batteries they're using, and if it's built in, and what kind of voltage. Proper airflow and leak-proof designs. If people are using carts that are leaking, they're leaching into other components, they don't have good airflow, they're clogging. Why are they clogging? Is there cotton, wicks? What's in between it? Those are all I would say, the most important parts in vape hardware. It's definitely the future. As much as doctors don't want to think about this, this is the future because it's portable, it's mobile, it's easy. And once we get to dosing, actual devices that dose, milligram per second type of stuff, that'll be there. So things to take away, we're at the end. Yep. Yeah, no, I'm thinking about you the whole time. So this is the last page, and ultimately, this is where it starts, regulatory evolution, right? We got to have stricter standards on testing, hardware, things that are allowed into the environment. That would be hemp, medical, recreational. It all starts here, and having the right policy. Consumers education, it's on, I think, the doctors and the education. Even in the adult use world, there's still a huge need for this. So I don't feel like you're going to be left out. I think you're going to be ahead of it. Innovation, nano-emulsification, solventless technologies, bio-enhanced formulations, medical devices, and let's not forget AI. They're going to replace us. At the end, they'll be making this presentation, not me, with a look-alike that looks like me, and I thank you for your time.
Yeah, listen, I'm not going to take up a minute more from these guys. They prepared talks. I've been over there. Thank you so much. That was awesome. Just 2 comments. One is, it'll be interesting to see how much pharma really wants to see the standardization, okay, of course, of the medicine and all the various extraction techniques that will allow pharma perhaps to maybe get some degree of satisfaction with the standardization. The other thing that I just wanted to say, I'd love to see a study that would have a sublingual and then test how much is actually delta 9 THC that gets into the bloodstream versus 11 hydroxy, which means that the patient's actually swallowed it, it's gone through the liver and has gone through conversion. That would be a fascinating study because I think all of us know that sublingual, is an awesome method, but it's hard to get, that full absorption by keeping the product, in that sublingual manner. Let's see who's next. Anyway, so I don't want to take, like I said, another minute of time because these guys are prepared. All right, Mark, come